In this video, I want to revisit the first rule of writing that I asked you to think about, and I want to give you two more rules. All right, these are very general rules that almost always are good to follow. And when I say writing, again, I mean creating a text, which should be a short film, a documentary, YouTube video, a website, a post on social media, small magazine article, newspaper article, book, booklet, pamphlet, brochure. There, it's all over. Okay, a text, copyable, accessible by a mass audience, replayable. All right, some sort of fixed material format. You're going to be making this throughout your life. All right, so when you put that and bring it forth to an audience, these are rules to follow. One is create interest, maintain it, reward it. I'm pushing back against this idea that you are to persuade an audience. Sometimes this audience will be persuaded, sometimes they won't. You can have excellent reasons, excellent explanation to maybe the point you're trying to make or what you're delivering, and just out of spite, they may decide not to agree with you. Many of them are just not going to be interested. Many times in my own life, that's the way. Someone stops me on the or calls me or what, and we have this conversation, and they're so passionate about something, and I realize they actually have a good reason, a good cause, and my life is too full. My emotional bandwidth has no more room. So I do not get involved with that. And at that point, they didn't persuade me to move my belief set into action and to do what they're doing. I would say, brother, let's not worry about that. Let's let that happen if it happens. Your job as a writer is one, create interest, maintain it, reward it. Rule number one, CMR. I don't know, come up with a phrase that helps you remember it. Cookies made right or whatever. I don't know. CMR, okay? Create interest, maintain it, reward it. You know what's funny is that you're probably going to remember that stupid phrase for the next 5 years. Cookies made right. Create interest, maintain it, reward it. Okay, that's what your job is to do. Now, the second job for you to do is to consider, all right, consider the topic that you're writing about and to write about interesting, relevant topics. When you can pick your topic, spend a lot of careful time choosing the correct thing to write about. Okay? A good way to kind of sense how people are going to respond to your topic is to take it to room 101, okay? Room 101. So, yes, picture a floor somewhere and there are your room numbers and here's room 101. You know why I call it room 101? Because there are 101 people in this room. Okay? You're the 101st and you're going to be up front. And in front of you are 100 people sitting there looking at you, and they're going to give you 20 minutes of their time. All right? And you get to stand in front of them and you get to talk about anything that you want to talk about. All right? It's pretty important what you pick because they can tune you out if they want to. Right? So if you pick about something, if you choose something to create a text with, or a verbal text, a speech or whatever, verbal presentation, you need to think about how the room is going to respond. Now let's talk about the demographic of the room. Let's just have it be from ages 25 or 20, sure, 20, 15, whatever. Let's go 20 to 80. All right, years old. All of them know English. All of them have grown up in the West. All of them have paid attention to culture. All of them care about life and about doing the best things, and they have that good alive concern. They haven't checked out. They're not mailing it in. They're not apathetic. They think about things. They care about things, and they're going to listen to you. All right, they're smart, but they're open-minded. All right, and if you start talking about a certain topic, are you going to capture 50% of that room? Are 50% of it going to be interested in that topic because somehow it's involved with their life? And if that's the case, can you bring in a new aspect or something that they really need to know and want to know and realize how valuable it is? If you can get 50% of the room to follow you, I think you've got a good topic. Okay? Anything beyond that is even better. Okay? But let's just talk about um, the art of sensing out this room, because you know yourself very well. You know what interests you. You know what doesn't interest you. You know your hobbies, your likes, your dislikes. You know what you like to read, what you like to watch, what you like to listen to, what you like to do. Okay? And we all have this constellation of likes, if you will. Now, when you learn how to think like the room, you are not thinking like yourself. You're able to look at that constellation of likes that are yours, and you're able to recognize the common core at the center that the room is going to share. Okay? I think we're all interested in health because it can really impact us. All right? So that's a common concern that we all share. But there might be things at the fringes of this constellation of likes and passions that you have that are not shared by the room, because the room is too much of a sampling. It's too broad. Okay, so we all are involved in very unique things. That's what makes us human. That's the beauty of it. And there might be some unique hobby or interest that I have that very few other people have. Paper airplanes, for example. I think paper airplanes are pretty cool. And designing the right one that can fly 50 yards is incredible. All right. So you think about that. When's the last time you've made a paper airplane that made it past 10 yards because it could fly straight? So now, if I present this to the room, I've got to work hard at this. I've got to be able to know what to do here in order to create interest in this, because I don't think 50 people in that room or more are going to be interested in paper airplanes. I've got to figure out how to make that work. Or here's another one about me: knots. I love knots. I tie knots every day. I don't know why. I was thinking about that the other day. Well, why am I tying these knots? I never actually use them, and I thought to myself, I just love doing this. I don't know. It's the way that a good rope feels in the hands, and you're making it, you're molding it into something. You can see the way the stress lines are working, and the bias of the rope, and the different types of twine, and you develop that knot, and you figure out a new way to tie, and it's relaxing. I just like it. Now you have stuff like this in your life too, so you know what I'm talking about. Not knots, but it might be something else. And I know that if I go into that room and I want to talk about knots, I've got to be very creative. I've got to be poetic. I've got to use just the right amount of humor and the right amount of detail and the right amount of interesting, because this alone in itself is not a topic that's going to carry interest. See? But unless your writing skills are at that level where that is something you can do, that's particularly a powerful experience for an audience, because then you are making them find a new interest as they listen to you. And they're going to remember that even longer. But until you get to that point, it's best to pick topics to write about that people are interested in automatically, right? Or that are so unique and bizarre and weird that they're going to get interested in it if you just... How about free diving? Being able to drop into the ocean and to sink without scuba gear. Yes, that has the ability to capture someone's attention, right? So now, as far as picking a weird topic, what if I were to tell you, hey, your job to talk to this room is about rats? How are you going to do it? And you might think, well, I don't know how many people are just interested in rats. So at that point, you have an added challenge here, but that is the stuff that makes writers become best-selling writers. Now, I want you to remember this, because we're going to have you read a book on rats just to illustrate this point. And we want you to watch an author actually make rats interesting. And I wonder if one of you isn't going to go out and try to get a rat as a pet after you read this book, because it's that good. Okay. Now, so one very important thing to remember when you think about a Room 101 is that you have to learn how to think like the room, which means you have to stop thinking like yourself in terms of what you like and what you don't like. You have to sense what the room is going to like. They already like it, or they're going to like it, because you realize you have a way to make it super interesting. Okay. So create interest, maintain it, reward it. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is pick the correct topics. And one technique to think correctly about how topics are received by your audience is to learn how to think like Room 101. All right. Now, think about the room, though. A thing about it is that it can be specialized. In other words, let's just say we're at a teachers conference and we actually have a room full of 101 teachers. You're one of them, and you're going to be up there presenting your topic. So, at that point, because the room is a specialized room, you can talk about effective ways to assess learning without testing. If you were able to tell that room, hey, I've got a really good way where you can tell exactly where your students are in terms of mastery without ever giving them a test, I bet you're going to capture 70-80% of that room within the first 2 or 3 minutes because they care about that. That's something that is important to educators. Now you take that very same topic, go back to the general room, and you say that, you might capture 30 or 40%, I'm imagining. Unless you have some great stories, some very incredible evidence or something, right? So, the rooms can be specialized. If you have a specialized audience, you can talk about certain topics that won't work in a generalized room, where the 100 people that you're talking to in that room are just general interest level. You know what I'm saying? Let's mix all sorts of careers in there, all sorts of hobbies. You have no idea what exactly this person does or doesn't do. You just know they're a human. They know language. They know English. They read. They think. They're smart. They're concerned, and they're willing to listen to you for 20 minutes. And they've had the experiences that a regular person has in the Western culture. Well, what are you going to talk about there, right? You go to a very specialized room. You need to understand the topics that you can use there. And maybe you can write something much more specific and prosaic, if you will, or technically aligned in that room that will never work in Room 101 in the same way. You have to approach it a different way if you're going to use the same topic. So let's remember these 2 rules. One is create interest, maintain it, reward it. Rule number 1. Rule number 2, pick interesting things to write about. And related to rule number 2, because of the room, you have to learn how to know your audience. Know your audience. 3 rules that we're going to reinforce in the upcoming terms. Okay. When I say know your audience, what is their readability level? What kind of words do they like to listen to? What are their backgrounds in terms of trauma or religion or finances or class or wealth or education? Right. What are their reading habits? Are these people used to reading books, or no, it's really they're highly literate, but it's much more of a visual, screen-driven experience. Well, how are you going to approach it? You have to know your audience, okay? So let's review. Rule number 1, what is it? Create interest, maintain it, reward it. Rule number 2, write about interesting things. It's as simple as that. Rule number 3, know your audience.